The massive crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 12 major species gathered for what many believed would be routine negotiations. Ambassador Zarath of the Velokian Empire adjusted her breathing apparatus, her multiple eyes scanning the familiar faces around the circular table. The soft blue glow of the Council's translation matrix hummed overhead, preparing to convert thousands of languages into coherent discourse. At the far end of the chamber sat the newest members of the galactic community, 3 humans in simple dark uniforms. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat perfectly still, her hands folded on the polished surface before her. Her companions, Admiral Marcus Torres and Dr. Elena Vasquez, flanked her with equal composure. Their presence had been requested after humanity's recent discovery of faster-than-light travel, a technology that had taken most species centuries to develop. Humans had achieved it in mere decades. The purpose of today's assembly, announced High Counselor Thexon, his voice resonating through the chamber's acoustic enhancers, is to discuss humanity's integration into the established galactic trade networks and territorial agreements. The counselor's words carried undertones that every species present understood. Integration meant submission to the existing power structures. It meant accepting predetermined roles within the galactic hierarchy. For 3,000 years, this system had maintained peace through carefully balanced territories and trade restrictions. Zarath watched the humans carefully. Their species had only made contact 6 months ago, yet their rapid technological advancement had already disrupted several established trade routes. Human merchant vessels had begun appearing in neutral zones, offering goods at prices that undercut traditional suppliers. More concerning was their apparent disregard for the unspoken rules that governed galactic commerce. Ambassador Chen, High Counselor Thexon, continued, his tone carrying the weight of authority accumulated over millennia. Your species must understand that galactic stability requires order. We have prepared a comprehensive framework for humanity's participation in our community. Sarah Chen remained motionless as a holographic display materialized above the table. The framework detailed humanity's proposed role. Suppliers of raw materials to more advanced species, restricted to a small cluster of systems in the outer rim, and subject to technological limitations that would prevent further rapid advancement. These terms, Thexon explained, have been carefully crafted based on extensive analysis of your species' capabilities and potential contributions. They represent a generous offer of membership in our galactic community. The chamber fell silent. Every representative present had once sat in a similar position, listening to similar terms. Some had negotiated minor adjustments, but none had fundamentally challenged the framework. It was the natural order. Older, more established species guided newcomers into appropriate roles. Ambassador Chen finally spoke, her voice clear and steady through the translation matrix. We appreciate the Council's consideration and the time invested in preparing these terms. Murmurs of satisfaction rippled through the chamber. The humans understood their place. However, Chen continued, and the murmurs died instantly. We must decline your offer. The silence that followed was deafening. Zarath felt her gill slits flutter involuntarily, a sign of extreme stress among her people. Around the chamber, representatives shifted uncomfortably in their various seating arrangements. The word decline rarely appeared in galactic diplomatic vocabulary. High Counselor Thexon's massive frame remained perfectly still for several long moments. When he spoke, his voice carried a note of confusion that few had ever heard from the ancient being. Perhaps there has been a translation error. You wish to negotiate different terms? No translation error, Admiral Torres interjected, his tone respectful but firm. Our position is clear. Humanity chooses to remain independent. The chamber erupted. Representatives began speaking simultaneously in dozens of languages, their voices creating a cacophony that overwhelmed the translation matrix. Several delegates rose from their seats, gesturing wildly as they attempted to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Counselor Vexhai of the Andorian Trade Federation slammed his appendage against his speaking console. This is unprecedented. No species has ever refused council integration. The framework ensures stability for all, added Representative Kildar of the Centauri Alliance, her crystalline voice ringing with indignation. Individual species cannot simply choose isolation. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward slightly. We're not choosing isolation. We're choosing self-determination. The concept seemed to break something fundamental in the assembled delegates' understanding. For millennia, the galactic community had operated on principles of guided development and hierarchical integration. Powerful elder species had shepherded younger civilizations into predetermined roles, maintaining order through careful resource allocation and technological oversight. High Counselor Thexan raised one massive arm, and gradually the chamber quieted. His ancient eyes, each the size of a human head, focused intently on the three representatives of humanity. "You do not comprehend the consequences of your words," he said slowly. "The galactic community has maintained peace for 3,000 years through cooperation and structured integration. Species that attempt to exist outside this framework face difficulties. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Economic isolation, technological embargoes, territorial disputes. The tools of galactic diplomacy could make existence extremely challenging for a single species attempting to stand alone." Ambassador Chen met his gaze without flinching. "We understand the challenges, Counselor, but humanity has faced challenges before." As if to underscore her point, the chamber's monitoring systems detected the arrival of additional human vessels at the edge of the system. Not the small diplomatic craft that had brought the delegation, but larger ships of unknown configuration. The detection system struggled to provide accurate readings, suggesting technological capabilities that shouldn't exist in such a young species. Zareth felt a chill run through her circulatory system. In all her years of diplomatic service, she had never witnessed such a fundamental challenge to the established order. The humans sat calmly amid the growing chaos of the chamber, seemingly unaware or unconcerned about the magnitude of their decision. The galactic community was about to discover just how dangerous it could be when a species refused to accept its assigned place in the cosmos. 3 hours after the diplomatic disaster, emergency sessions convened across the galaxy. In the secured chambers beneath the Council's primary facility, military advisors from 5 major powers gathered around a holographic display showing human ship movements throughout known space. The readings were troubling. General Krixtal of the Hegemony Defense Force studied the data with growing concern. "These energy signatures make no sense," he growled, his mandibles clicking nervously. "Their propulsion systems appear to violate several fundamental laws of physics as we understand them." Admiral Yensha of the Volokian fleet nodded her agreement. "Our scientists have been analyzing the readings since first contact. Human vessels move through space using technology we cannot identify, much less replicate. They achieve speeds that should tear their ships apart." The holographic display updated, showing new contacts appearing throughout the Outer Rim territories. Human vessels were emerging from hyperspace at coordinates that traditional faster-than-light travel couldn't reach. They were visiting systems that other species had written off as inaccessible due to gravitational anomalies or radiation barriers. "How many ships are we tracking?" asked Strategic Coordinator Malkson from her position at the Central Console. "The number keeps changing," Admiral Yensha replied grimly. "We've confirmed over 200 vessels, but our sensors lose track of them regularly. They seem to phase in and out of detectable space." Meanwhile, in the diplomatic quarters, Ambassador Chen sat across from a hastily assembled committee of senior counselors. The room's atmosphere was thick with tension and barely concealed threats. Counselor Thexan's voice rumbled through the chamber. "Your species has had 6 hours to reconsider its position, Ambassador. Surely you understand the gravity of your situation." Chen poured herself water from a simple glass pitcher, an action that somehow seemed defiant in the sterile environment of the alien facility. "Our position remains unchanged, Counselor." "Then let me be more direct," interjected Counselor Vexhai, his translator struggling with the complex harmonics of his anger. "No single species can stand against the combined might of the galactic community. We have resources spanning thousands of worlds, technologies refined over millennia, and military forces that have maintained order across the galaxy." Dr. Vasquez looked up from her datapad.
"How many of those worlds have you conquered, Counselor?"
The question hung in the air like an explosive device. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably, their various forms of communication creating a subtle symphony of distress. "We do not conquer," Thexan replied carefully. "We integrate, we guide. We provide structure and purpose. By denying species the right to choose their own path?" Admiral Torres asked quietly. "Choice is chaos. Counselor Quildar's crystalline voice chimed. Look at the historical records. Species that attempted independent development either destroyed themselves or became threats to galactic stability. The framework exists to prevent such disasters. Ambassador Chen leaned back in her chair, studying the assembled counselors. Tell me about the Kethrin Republic. The chamber fell silent. Zarath, who had been quietly observing from her position near the chamber's perimeter, felt her breathing apparatus hitch. The Kethrin Republic was ancient history, a cautionary tale rarely discussed in polite galactic society. The Kethrins are irrelevant to this discussion, Thexan said stiffly. Are they? Chen continued. From our research, they were a species that refused integration approximately 800 years ago. The historical records are interesting reading. They developed unique technologies, established independent trade relationships, and began offering alternatives to species dissatisfied with council oversight. They were eliminated because they became a threat to galactic stability, Fexhai snapped. They were eliminated because they offered other species a choice, Torres corrected. 23 worlds declared independence to join the Kethrin Alliance before the Council intervened. The silence that followed was different from earlier quiet moments. This was the silence of exposed secrets and uncomfortable truths. The galactic community's peaceful rhetoric masked a simple reality: conform or face extinction. Dr. Vasquez activated her datapad, projecting information into the chamber's display system. We've had 6 months to study galactic history, counselors. The pattern is consistent. Species that integrate lose their technological innovation within 2 generations. Their populations become dependent on council-provided resources. Their cultures gradually homogenize around galactic standard practices. This ensures stability, Quildar insisted. This ensures control, Chen replied. But humanity has a different perspective on stability. At that moment, alerts began sounding throughout the facility. Emergency communication channels activated as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human vessels had simultaneously appeared in 12 major trade routes, broadcasting a simple message to any ships willing to listen. The message was played in the chamber, translated into Standard Galactic. This is Captain Sarah Kim of the Human Merchant Marine. We are offering free passage to any species wishing to visit human space. No permits required, no council oversight. Come see what independent development looks like. Counselor Thexan's massive form rose from his seat, towering over the human delegation. This is an act of aggression against established galactic law. This is an act of commerce, Chen replied calmly. Humans have goods to trade and services to offer. We're simply making our availability known. You're encouraging rebellion against the established order. We're encouraging choice. The distinction seemed lost on the counselors, but reports continued flooding in. Ships from 17 different species had already changed course toward human space. More concerning were the communication intercepts suggesting that entire planetary governments were quietly evaluating the human offer. Admiral Yenshaw's voice crackled through the chamber's communication system. Counselors, we have confirmation that human vessels have established permanent positions in all major trade lanes. They're not moving to attack, but they're making it impossible to ignore their presence. General Krikstal added his report. Our analysis suggests they've deployed more advanced technology in the past 6 hours than most species develop in decades. Their defensive capabilities appear to exceed our current understanding. Ambassador Chen stood, her movements deliberate and confident. Counselors, humanity extends an invitation to peaceful coexistence based on mutual respect and voluntary cooperation. We're not seeking to destroy your system, but we won't be forced into submission by it. And if we refuse your invitation? Thexan asked, his voice carrying undertones of menace. Chen met his gaze steadily. Then you'll discover what happens when humans stop being polite. The chamber's atmosphere seemed to shift, as if the artificial gravity had suddenly increased. Every representative present understood that they were witnessing the end of an era. For 3,000 years, the galactic community had operated under established rules and hierarchies. Now, for the first time, those rules faced a challenge from a species that possessed both the technology and the will to resist. 3 hours after the diplomatic disaster, emergency sessions convened across the galaxy. In the secured chambers beneath the Council's primary facility, military advisors from 5 major powers gathered around a holographic display showing human ship movements throughout known space. The readings were troubling. General Kriegstall of the Hegemony Defense Force studied the data with growing concern. "These energy signatures make no sense," he growled, his mandibles clicking nervously. "Their propulsion systems appear to violate several fundamental laws of physics as we understand them." Admiral Yensha of the Volokian fleet nodded her agreement. "Our scientists have been analyzing the readings since first contact. Human vessels move through space using technology we cannot identify, much less replicate. They achieve speeds that should tear their ships apart." The holographic display updated, showing new contacts appearing throughout the Outer Rim territories. Human vessels were emerging from hyperspace at coordinates that traditional faster-than-light travel couldn't reach. They were visiting systems that other species had written off as inaccessible due to gravitational anomalies or radiation barriers. "How many ships are we tracking?" asked Strategic Coordinator Malkson from her position at the central console. "The number keeps changing," Admiral Yensha replied grimly. "We've confirmed over 200 vessels, but our sensors lose track of them regularly. They seem to phase in and out of detectable space." Meanwhile, in the diplomatic quarters, Ambassador Chen sat across from a hastily assembled committee of senior counselors. The room's atmosphere was thick with tension and barely concealed threats. Counselor Thexon's voice rumbled through the chamber. "Your species has had 6 hours to reconsider its position, Ambassador. Surely you understand the gravity of your situation." Chen poured herself water from a simple glass pitcher, an action that somehow seemed defiant in the sterile environment of the alien facility. "Our position remains unchanged, Counselor." "Then let me be more direct," interjected Counselor Vexhai, his translator struggling with the complex harmonics of his anger. "No single species can stand against the combined might of the galactic community. We have resources spanning thousands of worlds, technologies refined over millennia, and military forces that have maintained order across the galaxy." Dr. Vasquez looked up from her datapad.
How many of those worlds have you conquered, Counselor?
The question hung in the air like an explosive device. Several counselors shifted uncomfortably, their various forms of communication creating a subtle symphony of distress. "We do not conquer," Thexon replied carefully. "We integrate, we guide. We provide structure and purpose. By denying species the right to choose their own path?" Admiral Torres asked quietly. "Choice is chaos," Counselor Quildar's crystalline voice chimed. "Look at the historical records. Species that attempted independent development either destroyed themselves or became threats to galactic stability. The framework exists to prevent such disasters." Ambassador Chen leaned back in her chair, studying the assembled counselors. "Tell me about the Kethrin Republic." The chamber fell silent. Zarath, who had been quietly observing from her position near the chamber's perimeter, felt her breathing apparatus hitch. The Kethrin Republic was ancient history, a cautionary tale rarely discussed in polite galactic society. "The Kethrins are irrelevant to this discussion," Thexon said stiffly. "Are they?" Chen continued. "From our research, they were a species that refused integration approximately 800 years ago. The historical records are interesting reading. They developed unique technologies, established independent trade relationships, and began offering alternatives to species dissatisfied with council oversight. They were eliminated because they became a threat to galactic stability," Vexhai snapped. "They were eliminated because they offered other species a choice," Torres corrected. 23 worlds declared independence to join the Kethrin Alliance before the Council intervened. The silence that followed was different from earlier quiet moments. This was the silence of exposed secrets and uncomfortable truths. The galactic community's peaceful rhetoric masked a simple reality: conform or face extinction. Dr. Vasquez activated her datapad, projecting information into the chamber's display system. "We've had 6 months to study galactic history, counselors. The pattern is consistent. Species that integrate lose their technological innovation within 2 generations. Their populations become dependent on council-provided resources. Their cultures gradually homogenize around galactic standard practices. This ensures stability," Quildar insisted. "This ensures control," Chen replied. "But humanity has a different perspective on stability." At that moment, alerts began sounding throughout the facility. Emergency communication channels activated as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human vessels had simultaneously appeared in 12 major trade routes. broadcasting a simple message to any ships willing to listen. The message was played in the chamber, translated into standard galactic. "This is Captain Sarah Kim of the Human Merchant Marine. We are offering free passage to any species wishing to visit human space. No permits required, no council oversight. Come see what independent development looks like." Counselor Thexon's massive form rose from his seat, towering over the human delegation. "This is an act of aggression against established galactic law." "This is an act of commerce," Chen replied calmly. "Humans have goods to trade and services to offer. We're simply making our availability known. You're encouraging rebellion against the established order. We're encouraging choice." The distinction seemed lost on the counselors, but reports continued flooding in. Ships from 17 different species had already changed course toward human space. More concerning were the communication intercepts suggesting that entire planetary governments were quietly evaluating the human offer. Admiral Yenshaw's voice crackled through the chamber's communication system. "Counselors, we have confirmation that human vessels have established permanent positions in all major trade lanes. They're not moving to attack, but they're making it impossible to ignore their presence." General Krickstahl added his report. "Our analysis suggests they've deployed more advanced technology in the past 6 hours than most species develop in decades. Their defensive capabilities appear to exceed our current understanding." Ambassador Chen stood, her movements deliberate and confident. "Counselors, humanity extends an invitation to peaceful coexistence based on mutual respect and voluntary cooperation. We're not seeking to destroy your system, but we won't be forced into submission by it." "And if we refuse your invitation?" Thexon asked, his voice carrying undertones of menace. Chen met his gaze steadily. "Then you'll discover what happens when humans stop being polite." The chamber's atmosphere seemed to shift, as if the artificial gravity had suddenly increased. Every representative present understood that they were witnessing the end of an era. For 3,000 years, the galactic community had operated under established rules and hierarchies. Now, for the first time, those rules faced a challenge from a species that possessed both the technology and the will to resist. The revolution began quietly on Kepler 442b, a mineral-rich world in the outer territories. For 2 centuries, the Zephyrian Mining Collective had extracted valuable ores under strict Galactic Council oversight, with 70% of their output feeding the manufacturing centers of core worlds. The Zephyrians themselves lived in underground colonies, their pale, ethereal forms adapted to subterranean life after generations of forced mining operations. Prime Excavator. Silana had never questioned the arrangement until she received an encrypted transmission from human space 3 days after the Xerion incident. The message was simple. Earth offers fair trade agreements with no council oversight required. Your people's expertise is valued. Your world's resources belong to your species alone. The concept was revolutionary. Silana had grown up believing that resource allocation was a matter for higher authorities, that her people's role was predetermined by galactic necessity. Yet here was an entire species suggesting that the Zephyrians could choose their own economic destiny. She wasn't alone in her curiosity. Across the galaxy, similar transmissions reached species that had long accepted subordinate roles in the galactic hierarchy. The messages were carefully crafted, addressing specific grievances and offering concrete alternatives to council oversight. On Proxima Centauri III, the artistic luminari had seen their cultural expressions gradually homogenized under council cultural exchange programs. Human messages offered unrestricted cultural sharing and promised that artistic diversity would be celebrated rather than standardized. In the Vega system, the aquatic Haidari had been restricted to waterworld terraforming projects, their natural engineering abilities channeled into infrastructure development for other species. Humans offered technological partnerships that would allow the Haidari to explore their own creative engineering potential. Within 72 hours of the Xerion demonstration, 17 different species had sent covert delegations toward human space. The exodus was subtle at first, single ships departing on routine missions that never returned to their scheduled destinations. But the pattern became impossible to ignore as communication intercepts revealed the true scope of galactic dissatisfaction. Ambassador. Chen received the first official delegate in Earth's orbital diplomatic station, a crystalline structure that seemed to grow rather than be built. The delegate was Counselor Veltar of the Andromedian Research Institute, a species known for their advanced theoretical physics and careful political neutrality. Ambassador Chen, Veltar began, his voice carrying harmonic frequencies that suggested deep anxiety. My people have maintained careful neutrality in galactic politics for 8 centuries. We conduct research, share knowledge freely, and avoid involvement in territorial disputes. Chen gestured to comfortable seating designed to accommodate various alien anatomies. Your reputation for scientific excellence is well known, Counselor. What brings you to human space? Curiosity, Veltar admitted. Our analysis of your vessel's performance at Xerion suggests technological principles that shouldn't be possible. Energy absorption without conversion, matter integrity under extreme stress conditions, spatial displacement without detectable propulsion signatures. Dr. Vasquez joined the conversation from her position at the Chamber's scientific console. We'd be happy to share our research data, Counselor. Earth has always believed that scientific knowledge grows faster when shared freely. The statement clearly surprised Veltar. Freely. Without technology transfer agreements. Without exclusive licensing arrangements. Without restrictions, Chen confirmed. Human scientific advancement has accelerated precisely because we share information openly among our own people. We see no reason to change that policy when dealing with other species. Veltar's crystalline form seemed to shimmer with excitement. The Andromedian Research Institute has theoretical frameworks for several advanced technologies, but the Council's development restrictions prevent practical applications. Your offer could revolutionize our understanding of physics itself. Then let's begin immediately, Dr. Vasquez suggested. We have several ongoing projects that could benefit from Andromedian theoretical expertise. Meanwhile, in the secure chambers beneath the Galactic Council headquarters, emergency sessions had been running continuously for 3 days. Military advisors, economic analysts, and political strategists struggled to contain what was rapidly becoming the greatest crisis in galactic history. General Krikstal's report was grim. We've confirmed defections from 19 species across 12 sectors. The pattern is consistent. They're all moving toward human space under the pretense of trade negotiations. Strategic Coordinator Malkson studied the galactic map, noting the distribution of departing species. These aren't random defections. The humans are specifically targeting species with strategic resources or unique capabilities. The Zephyrians control mineral extraction in the Outer Rim. The Hydari are essential for waterworld development, and the Andromedians possess the most advanced theoretical physics research in the galaxy. It's coordinated subversion, Admiral Yenshaw added. They're systematically dismantling our resource networks by offering alternatives to established partnerships. Counselor Thexan's ancient form dominated the chamber as he processed the implications. For 3,000 years, we have maintained order through careful resource management and guided development. If species begin forming independent alliances, chaos, Vexhai interrupted. Uncontrolled technological development, resource wars, territorial expansion without oversight. We've seen this pattern before. The Kethran Republic, Quildar agreed. But the humans appear to possess far more advanced technology than the Kethrans ever achieved. General Krikstal activated the chamber's tactical display. Our analysis suggests that human defensive capabilities are just the beginning. Intelligence reports indicate massive construction projects in human space. Not just ships, but orbital installations, planetary infrastructure, even artificial habitats of unknown purpose. They're building an alternative galactic power structure, Malkson realized. Not conquering existing territories but creating new ones. The implications were staggering. The Galactic Council's authority rested on controlling access to advanced technology and essential resources. If humans could provide both without restriction, the entire foundation of galactic order would crumble. Back on Earth's diplomatic station, Ambassador Chen welcomed the 7th delegation of the day. This group was different, 3 species arriving together, having apparently coordinated their departure from Council space. Prime Excavator Silana represented the Zephyrians, her pale form almost ghostly in the station's standard lighting. Engineer Prime Dalketh spoke for the Hydari, his aquatic environment suit gleaming with moisture. Artist Supreme Lamara of the Luminari completed the trio, her bioluminescent skin creating subtle patterns that human translators were still learning to interpret. We come not as individual species, Silana explained, but as representatives of worlds that have chosen independence. Our peoples have decided to leave the Council's jurisdiction permanently. The statement sent shockwaves through galactic communication networks. This wasn't simple trade negotiation or technological exchange. This was outright secession from the galactic order. Chen leaned forward attentively. That's a significant decision. What prompted such a dramatic step? Freedom, Dalketh replied simply. For generations, our engineering capabilities have been restricted to projects approved by Council oversight. Your offer allows us to explore our potential without limitation. Lumara's skin patterns shifted to deep blues and purples, colors that human xenobiologists were learning indicated strong emotion. The Council's cultural exchange programs have gradually eliminated artistic diversity across the galaxy. Independent worlds under human protection could preserve and develop unique cultural expressions. And your resources would be your own, Chen added. No mandatory quotas, no extraction requirements, no enforced trade agreements. The three delegates exchanged glances, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of agreement. They had found what their species had been seeking for generations, the right to determine their own destiny. But in the depths of Council space, preparations were already underway for a response that would test human resolve like nothing before. If diplomacy and intimidation had failed, more direct measures would be necessary. The galaxy was about to discover that freedom always came with a price, and some powers would do anything to prevent others from paying it. The massive fleet began assembling at Rally Point Omega, a heavily fortified system deep in hegemony space. For the first time in galactic history, the five major powers had set aside their territorial disputes to address a common threat. Ships from the hegemony, the Velokian Empire, the Centauri Alliance, the Andromedian Collective, and even the reclusive Quantum Syndicate converged in a display of military might not seen since the Great War 3 millennia ago. Admiral Supreme Karathek stood on the command deck of the dreadnought Inevitable, watching as the combined fleet reached full strength. 2,000 vessels of various configurations filled the space around him, from nimble destroyers to massive siege platforms capable of cracking planetary crusts. The sight should have filled him with confidence, but intelligence reports from human space left him deeply uneasy. Fleet status report, he commanded, his voice carrying across the bridge through neural interfaces that connected him directly to his senior staff. All vessels report ready status. Admiral Supreme, responded Fleet Coordinator Yolandra. Combined firepower analysis suggests sufficient force to sterilize 50 inhabited worlds. Karathex nodded grimly. The mathematics were reassuring, but mathematics had failed to explain the encounter at Xerion. 3 destroyers had unleashed enough firepower to vaporize a small moon, yet the human vessel had continued on its course without apparent damage. If human defensive technology could scale to fleet engagements, raw firepower might prove irrelevant. Intelligence. Update from forward reconnaissance. Squadron 12, announced Communications Director Zethal. Human fleet movements. Detected throughout the Independence Corridor. Estimated 40 vessels of unknown classification. 40 ships against 2,000 seemed like favorable odds, but every previous engagement with human technology had defied conventional military analysis. Korathex had spent his career studying warfare across the galaxy. Yet these humans fought according to principles he couldn't comprehend. Meanwhile, in the newly established Free Zone, humanity's allies gathered at New Geneva Station, a sprawling orbital complex that had somehow been constructed in the 3 weeks since the mass defections began. The station's architecture defied conventional engineering, with organic curves and crystalline growths that suggested technology far beyond current galactic standards. Captain Torres addressed the assembled representatives with characteristic directness. The combined Council fleet will arrive in approximately 18 hours. Their intention is to force your species back into compliance through overwhelming military pressure. Prime Excavator Silana studied the tactical display showing the approaching armada. 2,000 ships, she observed quietly. Even with human technological advantages, how can such numbers be overcome? By changing the nature of the engagement, Torres replied. Traditional fleet combat relies on positioning, firepower concentration, and numerical superiority. Humans learned long ago that superior technology can make traditional tactics obsolete. Engineer Prime. Dalketh's aquatic environment suit bubbled with what humans had learned indicated deep thought among the Haidari. Your defensive capabilities at Zerion were remarkable, but sustained fleet engagement requires offensive capacity as well. Dr. Vasquez activated the holographic display, showing technical specifications that made several delegates step back in surprise. Human military doctrine focuses on force multiplication rather than force accumulation. A single ship with the right capabilities can neutralize entire fleets. The specifications revealed weapon systems based on principles that most species considered theoretical impossibilities. Gravitational manipulation devices that could collapse enemy vessels into singularities, temporal distortion fields that could slow incoming projectiles to manageable speeds, energy absorption matrices that converted hostile fire into additional power for human systems. Artist Supreme Lumara's bioluminescent patterns shifted to colors that indicated awe mixed with fear. These technologies, they represent paradigm shifts in physics itself. How did humanity develop such capabilities in mere decades? We thought differently about the problems, Torres explained. Most species develop technology incrementally, building on established principles. Humans tend to question the principles themselves. The answer was both accurate and incomplete. Humanity's rapid technological advancement had indeed come from questioning fundamental assumptions, but the full truth was more complex. Human development had been accelerated by a simple philosophy. If something was theoretically possible, someone would find a way to make it practical. Where other species saw insurmountable engineering challenges, humans saw interesting puzzles. Where others accepted limitations, humans sought alternatives. The result was technological development that appeared miraculous to species who had spent centuries perfecting conventional approaches. Back aboard the Inevitable, Admiral Supreme Korathex received updated intelligence that troubled him even more than the ship counts. Sir, our deep space reconnaissance has detected unusual energy signatures throughout the free zone. The readings suggest massive industrial operations, but we cannot identify the specific technologies involved. Industrial operations? Korathex queried. What kind of manufacturing capacity could they establish in 3 weeks? Unknown, sir. The energy output suggests planetary-scale operations, but sensor scans show no significant industrial infrastructure on any of the inhabited worlds. The mystery deepened as additional reports arrived. Human space showed signs of massive construction projects, yet traditional surveillance methods couldn't identify what was being built. Energy signatures appeared and disappeared without corresponding physical structures. Resource flows indicated enormous manufacturing operations that left no detectable traces. Korathex had fought in dozens of campaigns across 3 centuries, but never against an enemy who operated according to unknown principles. Military doctrine required understanding your opponent's capabilities and limitations. Against humans, both remained mysteries. Admiral Supreme, Fleet Coordinator Yolandra reported, "We're receiving a transmission from human space. They're broadcasting on all standard diplomatic frequencies." "Display it," Korathex ordered, though he suspected the message would only deepen the mystery. Ambassador Chen's image appeared in the fleet's communication array, transmitted from what appeared to be a simple diplomatic office. Behind her, however, technical displays showed information that made Korathex's command staff exchange worried glances. "Admiral Supreme Korathex," Chen began, somehow knowing exactly who would receive her message, "I hope you'll reconsider your current course of action. The free zone poses no threat to the galactic community. We simply offer an alternative to forced compliance." "You undermine 3,000 years of established order," Korathex replied. His communication transmitted across light years in real time through quantum entanglement networks. "We offer choice," Chen corrected. "Something the galaxy has been denied for far too long. Choice leads to chaos. The Council maintains peace through structured cooperation." Chen's expression shifted slightly, and Korathex noticed that the technical displays behind her were showing real-time information about his fleet. Information that should have been impossible to obtain across interstellar distances. "Admiral," she continued, "you're approaching with 2,000 ships crewed by beings who believe they're fighting for stability. But how many of those crew members have been given the choice to live freely? How many worlds in your alliance were given alternatives to integration?" The question struck at the heart of galactic civilization. Every species in the combined fleet had been integrated into the galactic community according to frameworks they hadn't designed. Their roles and limitations had been determined by councils they couldn't influence. Freedom cannot exist without order, Korathex insisted, though the conviction in his voice was wavering. Then let us demonstrate that freedom can create its own order, Chen replied. Turn your fleet around, Admiral. Don't force us to show you what human defensive capabilities look like when scaled to fleet engagement. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge of the inevitable in tense silence. Around the massive fleet, similar conversations were taking place as the human message propagated through the combined armada. For the first time in 3 millennia, the galaxy's established powers faced an opponent who questioned not just their authority, but the fundamental assumptions upon which their civilization was built. The approaching battle would determine whether those assumptions could survive contact with a species that refused to accept them. The lines had been drawn, and both sides now prepared for a confrontation that would reshape the galaxy forever. The moment that would reshape galactic history began not with the thunder of weapons fire, but with silence. The combined fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the free zone, expecting to find hastily assembled defenses, panicked civilian populations, and perhaps a desperate last stand by the human vessels that had disrupted 3 millennia of galactic order. Instead, they found empty space. Admiral Supreme Korathex stared at his tactical displays in confusion. Long-range sensors detected the inhabited worlds of the free zone, exactly where intelligence reports indicated, but space between the fleet and those worlds appeared completely vacant. No defensive installations, no patrol vessels, no signs of military preparation whatsoever. Sensor sweep complete, Admiral Supreme, reported his tactical officer. No hostile contacts detected within standard engagement range. Expand the sweep, Korathex ordered. Include passive scanning for stealth vessels and hidden installations. Minutes passed as the fleet's combined sensor arrays probed space around them. The results remained the same. Apparently empty vacuum between the assembled armada and their targets. This is impossible, muttered Fleet Coordinator Yelandra. Intelligence confirmed at least 40 human vessels operating in this region. Ships cannot simply vanish. Admiral Supreme Korathex had commanded fleets for over 2 centuries, fighting battles across dozens of star systems. He had faced ambushes, technological surprises, and strategic deceptions, but never had an enemy simply disappeared when confronted with overwhelming force. Communications, he ordered. Broadcast standard surrender demands on all frequencies. Perhaps they've realized the futility of resistance. The transmission echoed across the free zone. This is Admiral Supreme Korathex commanding the combined galactic fleet. All vessels in this region will surrender immediately for processing and return to lawful jurisdiction. Failure to comply will result in military action. The response came not from the human vessels they expected, but from the planets below. Every inhabited world in the free zone began broadcasting simultaneously, creating a chorus of voices speaking in dozens of languages. We are the Free Worlds Alliance, and the message began, translated through quantum communication networks in real time. We stand together as independent species choosing our own destiny. We do not recognize the authority of the Galactic Council to determine our future. On the bridge of the inevitable, Admiral Supreme Korathex felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of military service. Uncertainty. The planetary broadcast suggested entire civilizations had united behind the human philosophy of independence, creating not just a military alliance but a fundamental challenge to galactic order. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we're receiving transmission requests from 17 ships within our own fleet. Their crews are asking for clarification of mission parameters. The request was unprecedented. Fleet crews followed orders without question. It was the foundation of military discipline. Yet the message from the Free Worlds Alliance seemed to have created doubt among his own people. Deny all requests for clarification, Korathex ordered. All vessels maintain fleet formation and prepare for planetary bombardment. But before the order could be executed, space around the combined fleet began to change. What had appeared to be empty vacuum suddenly revealed itself as an intricate 3-dimensional maze of gravitational fields, energy barriers, and spatial distortions that trapped the entire armada in a carefully constructed cage. Gravitational anomalies detected throughout the fleet formation, reported the tactical officer, his voice rising in panic. Ships are being pulled out of formation by artificial gravity wells. Energy barriers activated around all vessels, added the sensor operator. We're boxed in by force fields that register off our measurement scales. Admiral Supreme Korathex watched in horror as his massive fleet was rendered helpless by technology that defied conventional physics. Ships that could level planets found themselves unable to maneuver, their weapon systems detecting targets but unable to achieve firing solutions through the maze of distortions surrounding them. Then the human ships appeared, not emerging from hyperspace or decloaking from stealth systems, but simply materializing in perfect formation around the trapped fleet. 40 vessels, as Ambassador Chen had indicated, but each one appeared to be constructed from materials and principles that shouldn't exist. The lead ship was sleek and organic, its hull seeming to flow and adapt in real time. Others displayed crystalline geometries that bent light in impossible ways. Several appeared to exist partially outside normal space, their edges fading in and out of visible reality. "This is Captain Sarah Kim of the Human Defense Force," came the transmission that reached every ship in the combined fleet simultaneously. "Your vessels are currently contained within a localized space-time manipulation field. Your crews are unharmed, but your ships cannot move or fire weapons until we release the containment." Admiral Supreme Korathex attempted to activate his flagship's primary weapons, but targeting systems couldn't lock onto the human vessels. The ships seemed to exist in multiple spatial coordinates simultaneously, making conventional attacks impossible. "This is an act of war," he broadcast on all frequencies. "No, Admiral," Captain Kim replied. "This is a demonstration. You came here with 2,000 ships to force independent worlds back into submission. We've neutralized your entire fleet without firing a single shot or harming a single being." Around the trapped armada, the human vessels began broadcasting detailed technical specifications, not weapons data or military intelligence, but scientific information about the technologies that had made the containment possible: gravitational engineering, spatial manipulation, temporal field generation, concepts that most species considered theoretical impossibilities. "We're not keeping these technologies secret," Captain Kim continued. "Every ship in your fleet is now receiving complete technical specifications for everything you're experiencing. Take them back to your homeworlds. Study them. Share them freely." The implications were staggering. Human technology wasn't just advanced. It represented paradigm shifts in understanding reality itself. And rather than hoarding these capabilities, humans were distributing them to potential enemies. "Why?" Admiral Supreme Korathex asked, his voice carrying across the communication networks. "Because knowledge grows when shared." Ambassador Chen's voice joined the transmission from the planetary surface. "Because enforced ignorance creates the conditions you call stability, but we call stagnation." On ships throughout the combined fleet, crew members studied the incoming technical data with growing amazement. Engineers realized that their understanding of physics had been artificially limited by centuries of guided development. Scientists discovered that theoretical frameworks they'd been taught were impossible actually had practical applications. Most disturbing for the fleet commanders was the growing realization that their crews were beginning to question not just the current mission, but the entire structure of galactic civilization. "Admiral Supreme," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving requests for extended technical consultation from 43 vessels. Their science departments want to establish permanent data links with human research facilities." "Denied," Korathex replied automatically, but he could see the doubt spreading through his command staff. Captain Kim's voice cut through the confusion. "The containment field will be released in exactly 1 hour, Admiral. You'll be free to return to Council space with complete technical specifications for everything you've experienced today. What you do with that information is your choice. And if we choose to continue this attack, then you'll discover what human weapons look like when we stop being defensive." The threat was delivered calmly, but every sensor reading confirmed that the human vessels possessed capabilities that made the combined fleet's firepower irrelevant. More importantly, the technical data flooding the fleet's computers revealed that these technologies could be understood and replicated by any species willing to abandon conventional limitations. As the hour counted down, Admiral Supreme Korathex faced the most difficult decision of his career. He could order continued hostilities and watch his fleet face destruction against impossible odds, or he could retreat and report that the entire foundation of galactic order had just been shattered by a species that gave away their most advanced secrets freely, the choice would determine not just the fate of his fleet, but the future of galactic civilization itself. 6 months later, the galaxy bore little resemblance to the carefully ordered civilization that had existed for 3 millennia. The Great Council chambers on Nexus Prime echoed with shouting voices, as representatives from dozens of species demanded explanations, negotiations, and fundamental changes to the structures that had governed galactic society. Councillor Thexen's ancient form trembled with barely controlled fury as he addressed the chaotic assembly. Order, we must maintain order. But order, as the galaxy had understood it, was rapidly becoming extinct. The technical specifications released by the human fleet had spread throughout known space faster than any attempt to contain them could manage. Within weeks, species across the galaxy had begun developing technologies that their oversight councils had insisted were impossible. The Corithian Engineering Guild had successfully tested gravitational manipulation devices in their home system, creating artificial gravity wells that revolutionized their mining operations. The Epsilon Eridani Research Collective had developed temporal field generators that allowed them to accelerate manufacturing processes beyond anything previously imaginable. Even species that had been classified as technologically primitive were achieving breakthrough innovations by applying human theoretical frameworks. Ambassador Zarath of the Velokian Empire stood to address the increasingly unruly assembly. The situation has moved beyond our ability to control through traditional means, she announced. 47 species have formally withdrawn from Council jurisdiction. Economic disruption has reached critical levels as established trade networks collapse. Collapse? Countered Prime Minister Velkun of the newly independent Altarian Republic. Our gross domestic product has increased by 300% since abandoning Council resource quotas. Our people enjoy technological benefits that were denied to us for centuries under guided development policies. The statistics were impossible to ignore. Independent worlds weren't descending into chaos as Council projections had predicted. Instead, they were experiencing unprecedented prosperity as their populations gained access to technologies and resources that had previously been restricted. Dr. Elena Vasquez, representing Earth at these proceedings for the first time, rose from her designated seat in what had once been the observer section. Counselors, the fundamental premise of your civilization has been proven false. Technological restriction does not create stability. It creates stagnation. Her words carried through the chamber's translation systems in dozens of languages, but their meaning was universal. The careful balance that the Council had maintained for millennia had been based on the assumption that rapid development led to chaos and destruction. Human example had demonstrated the opposite. Your species has existed for barely a century in galactic terms, Councillor Vexhai replied, his harmonic voice ringing with indignation. What could you possibly understand about maintaining order across thousands of worlds? We understand that order imposed through force and restriction breeds resentment and rebellion, Dr. Vasquez replied calmly. We've seen what happens when intelligent beings are allowed to pursue their potential without artificial limitations. High Councillor Thexen activated his speaking platform, his massive frame commanding attention throughout the chamber. The human experiment has lasted mere months. Our system has maintained peace for 3,000 years. Your system maintains stagnation, corrected Ambassador Chen, entering the chamber with a small delegation of human representatives. Peace built on suppression isn't peace. It's temporary quiet while pressure builds toward inevitable explosion. The human delegation's arrival created a stir throughout the assembly. In the months since the fleet confrontation, humans had become the most sought-after partners in galactic politics. Their technology-sharing policies had created prosperity wherever they were implemented, while their military capabilities ensured that aggressive attempts to restore the old order failed consistently. What do you propose? Thexen asked finally, his ancient voice carrying weariness that spoke to eons of accumulated authority, slowly slipping away. Ambassador Chen activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy as it currently existed. Independent worlds glowed in blue, Council territories remained red, and neutral zones appeared in yellow. The visual was striking. Nearly half the galaxy had transitioned to independent status. We propose a new model, Chen announced. Voluntary cooperation instead of enforced compliance. Technology sharing instead of development restrictions. Cultural exchange instead of standardization. Chaos, Vexai muttered. Freedom, corrected Prime Excavator Silana, her pale Zephyrian form rising from the growing independent delegation section. My people have achieved in 6 months what centuries of guided development never allowed. Our mining operations now utilize gravitational engineering to extract resources without environmental damage. Our population enjoys living standards that were unimaginable under council oversight. Similar testimonials came from representatives throughout the chamber. The Haidari had developed aquaculture systems that could feed billions while enhancing ocean ecosystems. The Luminari had created artistic technologies that transformed entire worlds into living canvases of beauty. The Andromedians had made theoretical breakthroughs that opened pathways to technologies beyond current imagination. Dr. Vasquez activated additional displays showing comparative data. Species under the council system show consistent patterns. Technological development plateaus after initial integration. Cultural diversity decreases over time, and economic growth stagnates at levels that benefit established powers, while keeping newer members dependent. Independent worlds show opposite trends, Ambassador Chen continued. Accelerating technological development, cultural renaissance as species rediscover suppressed traditions, and economic growth that benefits entire populations rather than just established elites. The data was overwhelming and undeniable. The Council's civilization had created stability through suppression, while human-influenced independence created progress through freedom. Councillor Quildar's crystalline voice chimed with what humans had learned indicated deep distress. If the current trends continue, the Council system will collapse completely within 2 years. Good, said Engineer Prime Dalketh of the Haidari, his aquatic suit bubbling with satisfaction. It's time for something better. High Councillor Thexan remained silent for long minutes, processing implications that his ancient mind struggled to accept. Finally, he spoke with the weight of 3 millennia of authority. What guarantees do you offer that this freedom won't lead to expansion wars and territorial conflicts? The same guarantee you offered, Ambassador Chen replied. None, but we offer something. Your system never could. The choice to determine our own risks instead of having them chosen for us. The silence that followed was different from the tense quiet of earlier negotiations. This was the silence of fundamental change, of old certainties crumbling and new possibilities emerging. Artist Supreme Lumara of the Luminari rose, her bioluminescent patterns shifting through colors that represented hope and determination. I move for formal dissolution of the Galactic Council's authority over member worlds and the establishment of a new alliance based on voluntary cooperation. The motion was seconded by 17 species simultaneously. As the vote proceeded, it became clear that the galaxy was choosing a new path, not the enforced order of the old system, but the uncertain freedom of self-determination. When the final tally was announced, the age of galactic councils had ended, and the age of galactic freedom had begun. Humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had won a war not through superior firepower, but through superior ideas. The galaxy would never be the same. And for the first time in 3,000 years, that was exactly what its inhabitants wanted. As the assembly dissolved and new alliances began forming, Ambassador Chen stood with her human colleagues watching history reshape itself around them. Think it will work? Dr. Vasquez asked quietly. It's working already, Chen replied, gesturing to the vibrant chaos of species mixing freely for the first time in millennia. Freedom is messy, but it's also alive. Outside the Great Chamber, a galaxy full of beings who had spent their lives following predetermined paths suddenly faced infinite possibilities. The future was uncertain, but for the first time it was truly their own.